question is, what's a sim pod?
I didn't think that it would look anything close to as what it looks like right now.
So I was looking for something to motivate Daniel in sim pods, and my first question is, what's a sim pod? So he was showing me these things online, and he had some drawings of sim pods that, you know, he thought about building, and they're all just, they're just frames with seats in them and mounts for all the controls, and yeah, they're pretty cool. And I don't remember which one of us came up with the idea, but one of us said, you know, what if we built this into an actual car? That kind of opened Pandora's box. It was on from there. And so we kind of got to talking about it. Daniel wanted to use a Lamborghini Countach.
But then we realized that's expensive because Lamborghini Countaches are rare. And we did look through a bunch of cars, and we said, all right, you know what, the C3 is common, but also you can tell what it is because it's got very defined body lines. And yeah, the C3 Corvette is also my favorite generation of Corvette and one of my favorite cars of all time.
So Daniel and I started hunting around for parts, and we found several Corvette junkyards. The shell we found is a 1980. We found it down at Williams Corvette in Sumter, South Carolina. A gentleman down there, Bill Phillips. His friend Mike was there. I'm not sure they completely understood what we were doing, but what they did understand with this was that this was a father-son Corvette project. And knowing that, they were all in. They could not have been more helpful. They hunted around for parts, pulled parts off other cars, said, hey, you know, I would think you're going to need this. They helped us get this thing loaded up. We came back with a full truckload full of parts. And parts that would probably never make it onto another driving car, but were great for our purposes. So those guys were awesome. Another place that we sourced a bunch of parts for, Randy Venters in Rayford, North Carolina. Same thing. Knowing this was a father-son project, he just was more than enthusiastic to help.
Cutting up a Corvette felt blasphemous. It was dumb, and it was fun. So cutting up the car wasn't hard on paper. It was awkward.
So the car sits on an aluminum frame that was welded up on the shop. The car sits down on its original frame rail on one side, and then the transmission tunnel on the other. We reconditioned the door. We cut out the side impact beam, which saved a lot of weight. Originally, we thought we'd be able to leave the roof on it, but in order to get it through most doors, we ended up having to make the roof removable. So we refurbished all the interior plastic trim pieces. We welded in a mesh behind the driver's door and fiberglass and shaped that to kind of match the lines, so it made up with the tail section. The tail section is junkyard. It had been hit on the right-hand side, so the left-hand side was still good enough for us to use with a little body work and reconditioning. The front fender was just a piece of a fender from another project, but it was the section that we needed.
The dashboard was in rough shape, and we used a bunch of foam to seal it back together, and it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, and so the dashboard came out of the original 1980 Corvette, and it was a pretty rough shape, but we were going to significantly change the shape of the dashboard anyway. So the speaker holes, the vent holes across the top, they got steel mesh, filled in with foam, and bonded over. The square gauge cluster came out, and so we had to make a round opening to accept the electronic steering wheel.
The wheel was kind of a pain to hang up in there, just because it was so weird to fit like an actual steering column in the steering column place. But the shifter went in well.
So Daniel spent a lot of time extracting that original 1980 e-brake handle.
So salvaging the e-brake handle was just about the most annoying thing I've ever done.
It was in kind of rough shape. It was pretty rusted over and just hard to get out to start with. But he got it out of there, and we refurbished it and figured out a way to mate it up to the e-brake mechanism.
And it's on there now, but with no lack of struggle.
All the computer, all the electronics sit behind the driver's seat, in front of the tail lights. The back section comes off to give us access to everything. It has a 49-inch monitor on our articulating monitor mount. The mount's attached to a mast bolted to the main frame of the car, so the driver can adjust the monitor to the best view for their driving position.
The computer system is your standard gaming system, or at least it's built the same way. It's a little higher tech than most gaming rigs because normally you don't need this much power, but if you're running racing games at this resolution on this type of monitor, you need some power. So it has a i7 9th generation. It has 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM on a gigabyte motherboard. It has a 4070 in it for ridiculous graphics. Yeah, it's a pretty simple build. It's in a regular ATX case. The primary function was just raw power because that's what we need to run these kind of games at this kind of resolution.
So the computer utilizes a wireless keyboard. We have a wireless mouse. There's a mouse pad in the side panel that'll fold down. The mouse has a little holster on the side of the car. The keyboard just tucks kind of behind the e-brake out of the way.
Well, it has just about everything. It does just about everything a normal car does aside from move. When you open it, it has a dome light. Those come on. The tail lights come on. When you get in it, it is started. Everything is started by a key. You put this key in the ignition switch. You turn it, and it starts the computer, the monitor, the lights, the stereo, everything.
When you turn it over to the second position, just like you were starting a car, it electrifies an actuator that turns on the computer. The actuator actually pushes the on button to the computer. I'm sure there's a more graceful electronic way to do that, but this was a simple way to keep it all on a 12-volt system. The gauge cluster is 3D printed. The gauges actually work for what they are. So the voltmeter works as a voltmeter for the car. Daniel engineered a way for the sensor to go into the computer and sit right under the graphics card. So the temperature gauge is actually sensing the temperature of the graphics card in the computer. The other two gauges, they function, but they're pretty much just for show. So we put a little pump in with a little fighter jet style rocker switches so that you can flip the switch and the boost gauge will go up. The car does have power seats. We have a fan that blows through the original air conditioning ports.
My favorite features of the car is the sound system. We decided to put 5 speakers in there and a subwoofer. And it's super realistic when you're like jamming the gas down. You can like individually hear like you can feel the RPMs going higher like you would in like a normal car. Like when you're shifting gears and like going up to the rev limiter are pretty realistically replicated in this thing with nothing but a sound system, and it's really awesome.
We had a lot of fun putting this thing together. It was great because we just let the creativity run wild. It was no holds barred. You know, of course it's got power seats. Why wouldn't it have power seats? You know, why wouldn't it have a great sound system in it? You know, it's just a fun project, and we had a great time doing it. I could not be more proud of Daniel.
It went a lot smoother than something this absurd should go, to be honest with you. You can't just say what it is without having to explain the entire concept of this thing, because nobody does stuff like this. It's kind of just mind-blowing how it actually works. And when I say actually works, I'm just fascinated at the fact that it actually functions as what we intended it to be. I didn't think that it would look anything close to as what it looks like right now. I didn't think it was going to be like this finished and polished, and it wasn't easy, but it was also kind of fun. You know, it was an experience. Thanks, Dad.